In this video, I'm going to try to predict almost every 2024 to 2025 MLB free agent signing. And before we get into this, please keep in mind, this is just my thought process. I'm probably going to be wrong on 99.9% of these, but I'm just trying to have some fun. I'm going to go in order of positions, talk about players, and predict the money that they might get this offseason. In this video, I will also not be covering every single free agent. I'm going to just mainly be talking about the main free agents that are kind of known names at this point. But without further ado, let's get into this video. First up is catcher. And I'll be honest, there's really none worth talking about. Yes, there is free agent catchers. Most of them will just sign a year or two contract for minimal money, and that's about it. So where the list really begins is first base. First up is Christian Walker, and I have him going to the New York Yankees on a 3-year, $60 million deal. The Yankees have a big hole over at first base, and I think Walker will be the one to fill it. He's a Gold Glove defender, and I think his bat will play pretty well at Yankee Stadium. Following Walker is Pete Alonso, and I have him going to the Houston Astros on a 5-year, $125 million contract. The Astros have had an issue at first base for a few years now, and I think Pete Alonso will be the one to come into Houston and just mash baseballs at that position. Next up is Carlos Santana, and I have him going back to the Seattle Mariners on a 2-year, $14 million contract. As a Mariners fan, I listen and watch a lot of stuff about the Mariners, and a lot of people have predicted that Justin Turner will go back to the Mariners, which I can foresee happening. But if I had to pick between Santana or Turner, I think I'm going to go with Santana. Santana is a better defender at first base. He can, of course, DH, and he still has a bit more pop than Turner does. So if I had to pick between the two, I think I'm picking Santana, even though I'd be completely okay with Turner coming back as a Mariners fan. After Santana, we have Paul Goldschmidt, and I'm predicting that Paul Goldschmidt goes back to the Arizona Diamondbacks on a 2-year, $20 million contract. Goldschmidt did not have a good year last year, so he's not going to get a huge contract, which is beneficial for the Diamondbacks, and the Diamondbacks don't have a first baseman because Walker's going to the Yankees, according to my prediction. So I think that'll be a nice little homecoming for Goldschmidt and the Diamondbacks. And we just talked about Justin Turner a moment ago, and of course I said he could be back as a Mariner, who knows right now, but if he's not a Mariner, I see him being a San Diego Padre on a 1-year, $7 million contract. The Padres always like their veterans, and I feel like he'd fit in well there. He could play a little first, DH, he just seems like a fit for the Padres if he's not on the Mariners. And finally, rounding out our first base position, we have Anthony Rizzo, and I have him going to the Cincinnati Reds on a 1-year, $3.5 million contract. I feel like Rizzo would play really well at that ballpark, kind of on a prove-it deal. A lot of young guys on that team, he'd be a good clubhouse presence, and honestly, if he's in that lineup every day, he's probably going to hit 30 home runs in that ballpark. Following first base, we have second base. And there's not a lot of second basemen to talk about, but first up, we have Gleyber Torres. And I have Gleyber Torres going to the LA Angels on a 3-year, $24 million contract. The Angels have said they want to spend money, and I feel like Torres is just the perfect Angel for whatever reason. I don't know, just seems like a fit there. Following Torres, we have Whit Merrifield, and I have him going to the Miami Marlins on a 1-year, $1.5 million contract. Merrifield's just trying to hang on at this point, and I think he'll go to a team like the Marlins and play there for probably half a year, and if he's doing well, he'll of course get traded at the deadline. Following Merrifield, I have Jorge Polanco, and I have Polanco going to the New York Yankees on a 1-year, $3.5 million contract. Since the Yankees lost their second baseman and Torres, I feel like Polanco could go there and do pretty well on a prove-it deal. Polanco really struggled with the Mariners last year, but he's really not that old. He's only 31, I think, and he had a bum knee last year. He already had knee surgery. So again, I think on a prove-it deal at Yankee Stadium, Polanco could have a really good year for them. Following second, we have shortstop. And the first shortstop we're going to talk about is Willy Adames. And I have Adames going to the Toronto Blue Jays on a 6-year, $150 million contract. Now, Adames has talked about potentially moving from shortstop to either third or potentially second. And I don't know if they would do that, if they would put Adames at short and then move Bichette, vice versa. Who knows, but the Blue Jays, I think, are wanting to spend money, and this seems like a fit for them if they don't get Juan Soto. Following Adames, we have Ha-Seong Kim, and I have him going to the San Francisco Giants on a 4-year, $50 million contract. I know Adames has been connected to the Giants this offseason, but I feel like Kim will be a cheaper option for the Giants, who can also play multiple positions, so therefore why I have Kim going to the Giants. Lastly, for shortstop, we have Jose Iglesias, and I have him going back to the New York Mets on a 1-year, $2.5 million contract. Following shortstop, we have third base. And I have Bregman going to the Detroit Tigers on a 6-year, $180 million contract. I just feel like Bregman's time is done with the Astros, and him going to the Tigers just fits very well. Go back with AJ Hinch. The Tigers are an up-and-coming team, so Bregman to the Tigers just kind of sounds right to me. And that about does it for third base. There's not many other third basemen that are really worth talking about, so we're moving on to outfield after Bregman. Now, first up for outfield, we have left field. And the first left fielder I'm talking about is Tyler O'Neill, and I have him going to the Toronto Blue Jays on a 2-year, $25 million contract. O'Neill was really good last year for the Red Sox, but he was injured a few different times, and that's been his issue his whole career is injuries. But the Blue Jays do need outfield help, so therefore why I have him going to the Blue Jays. Following O'Neill, we have Jurickson Profar, and I have Profar going back to the San Diego Padres on a 3-year, $30 million contract. He obviously likes playing there, he hits well there, I think the Padres like having him, so good pairing between the two. Following Profar, we have Mark Canha, and I have Mark Canha going to the Colorado Rockies on a 1-year, $3 million contract. I have no rhyme or reason on this signing. I just figured Blackman's gone from the Rockies, and they probably need another right fielder, DH type guy, so Canha would be cheap, so here you go. Following Canha, we have Michael Conforto, and I have him going to the Cleveland Guardians on a 2-year, $10 million contract. Conforto could be some cheap pop that the Guardians are kind of missing in their very young and speedy lineup, so there you go. Following Conforto, we have Alex Verdugo, and I have him going to the Washington Nationals on a 3-year, $36 million contract. I know this is a random one, but I feel like the Nationals are going to start trying to build their team here going forward. They have a very young core that seems to be pretty good, and Verdugo is a very solid player that probably could help that young core. And at the very worst, that would be a very tradable contract if Verdugo is pretty good and the Nationals don't want him any longer. Following Verdugo, we have Tommy Pham, and I have him going to the Pittsburgh Pirates on a 1-year, $2 million contract. Pham's played on pretty much every other team at this point, so why not the Pirates? And following Pham is Jesse Winker, and I have him going back to the Cincinnati Reds on a 1-year, $1.5 million contract. Winker really did kind of find himself again last year with the Nationals and the Mets, and I think that will be rewarded by actually getting a major league contract with his former team, the Reds. Moving on to center field, and our first center fielder is Harrison Bader, and I have him going back to the New York Mets on a 1-year, $6 million contract. Could be way off on this one, I have no idea, but when I really thought about it, I couldn't see Bader going anywhere else, so therefore going back to the Mets. Following Bader, we have Michael A. Taylor, and I have him going to the Tampa Bay Rays on a 1-year, $2 million contract. Honestly, no real rhyme or reason, he just feels like a Ray to me. And finally, for our center fielders, we have Kiki Hernandez, and I have him going back to the Dodgers on a 1-year, $2.5 million contract. I'm not overthinking this one. Now moving on to right field, this is where stuff's going to get a little wonky probably for some people. So first up, we have Juan Soto, and I have him going to the San Francisco Giants on a 14-year, $600 million contract. You heard that right, folks. I know it's more than likely that Soto will go back to the Yankees. I fully understand that, but the Giants have been trying to get a star on their team for a few years now, and they have not been successful. So if they throw enough money at Soto, maybe they'll get him. Who's to say? And we don't know how Buster Posey is going to operate the Giants team, so he may not spend a lot of money at all. Or again, maybe the Giants are looking for that true star, like when they try to sign Carlos Correa or Aaron Judge. Soto might be that guy, but we'll have to wait and see. Following Soto, we have Anthony Santander, and I have him going to the Yankees on a 3-year, $50 million contract. Simply put, a replacement for Soto. I think Santander would hit real well at Yankee Stadium, like most people do. He could play right field well enough, I guess, because they're still going to DH Stanton, but on days that Stanton is hurt, like he always is hurt at least, 15, 30 games a year, Santander can DH at that point. So moving on from Santander to Teoscar Hernandez, and I have Hernandez going back to the LA Dodgers on a 3-year, $70 million contract. LA needs an outfielder. It's just too good of a pairing to pass up. And lastly, for our right fielders is Max Kepler. And randomly, I have him going to the Texas Rangers on a 2-year, $20 million contract. I know the Rangers are kind of at the point where they don't really want to spend too much money, but Kepler could help that lineup a little bit, and he can DH, play outfield, and in my mind's eye, he just seems like a Ranger to me. Now moving on to DH, and the first DH we have up is Jock Peterson, and I have him going to the New York Mets on a 1-year, $15 million contract. He mashes certain pitching, and I feel like he just would mesh with the rest of that Mets team. Following Peterson is JD Martinez, and I have JD Martinez going back to the Boston Red Sox on a 1-year, $8 million contract. The Red Sox are going to have a very young team this year, especially if they start calling up some of their top prospects, and I feel like JD Martinez would be a really good veteran presence, along with still being a pretty productive DH, so therefore why I have him going back to the Red Sox. And finally for the DHs is Andrew McCutchen, and of course I have him going back to the Pirates on a 1-year, $4 million contract. Simply put, he should be a Pirate for the rest of his career, however long he wants to keep playing. And last but not least is starting pitching. And again, I'm not talking about every starting pitcher here that's a free agent. I'm going to talk about kind of the main ones. Furthermore, I will not be talking about relief pitchers because that's such a crapshoot, and I just really don't feel like getting in the weeds on the relief pitchers. So first up for starting pitchers, I have Hiroki Sasaki going to the San Diego Padres on a 6-year, $6 million deal. That's a bonus. I don't really know how that money is going to work exactly. I looked up how Ohtani's contract worked when he first came over from Japan, and it looked like it was a minor league contract with like $3.5 million as a bonus, and that was the money that was given to him, and then he just make a league minimum. Generally speaking, that's what's going to happen for Sasaki, and I just see him going to the Padres. But same time, I'm going to say it here, I could see him going to the Giants also, and or the Mariners. Who knows what's going to happen? He might be a Yankee by the end of December. Who knows? But either way, following Sasaki is Corbin Burnes, and I have him going back to the Orioles on a 5-year, $150 million contract. This was a good pairing last year, and I don't think either of them should mess it up. Now, following Burnes is Blake Snell, and I have him staying in the state of California, just going south to the LA Angels on a 4-year, $100 million contract. Like I said earlier, the Angels have said they want to spend money, so here you go. They have no pitching at all. He could anchor that staff. And at the very worst, that's a pretty tradable contract if Snell is elite and the Angels are horrible for a year or two with them. Following Snell, we have Yusei Kikuchi, and I have him going back to the Astros on a 3-year, $50 million contract. Simply put, Kikuchi was the best he's ever been with the Astros, and I don't think he should mess with that. Following Kikuchi, we have Max Fried, and I have him going back to the Braves on a 4-year, $100 million contract. The Braves gave him a qualifying offer, but with that said, I don't think he'll accept the qualifying offer, and I do think he'll sign more of a long-term deal with the Braves. Following Fried is Nathan Eovaldi, and for some reason I have him going to the Cubs on a 3-year, $75 million contract. The Cubs always seem to at least pay one person a ton of money every year, even if it's not the best decision, and I feel like Eovaldi will be that guy this year for them. Following Eovaldi is Jack Flaherty, and I have him going to the Boston Red Sox on a 5-year, $100 million contract. I also see Flaherty going back to the Dodgers or even the Angels, but the Red Sox, I feel like they want to spend some money on some pitching this year, so therefore Flaherty going to Boston. Now following Flaherty, we have Kyle Gibson, and I have him going to the Yankees on a 1-year, $14 million contract. The Yankees obviously had rotation issues at the end of this year, and I feel like Gibson, being a veteran presence, can eat a lot of innings, is a good fit for the Yankees rotation. Now following Gibson, we have Justin Verlander, and I have him going back to the Tigers on a 1-year, $10 million contract. It's another guy, it's a great homecoming. Verlander is still very serviceable, he will eat innings, and it's just a good story. Why not have him go out with the Tigers, maybe even go on a big playoff run? Who knows? Next up is Nick Pivetta, and I have him going back to the Red Sox on a 3-year, $46 million contract. He seems to pitch well there. They seem to like him enough, so going back to Boston. Following Pivetta, we have Sean Manaea, and I have him going to the New York Yankees on a 4-year, $70 million contract. Sorry, Mets, I think you're losing out on Manaea, and he's going to the Yankees. Now, following Manaea, I have Charlie Morton, and I have him going to the LA Dodgers on a 1-year, $15 million contract. Now, the Dodgers have a lot of starting pitchers on the roster, just most of them are hurt or get hurt, and Morton is one of those veterans that you can bring in, eats a lot of innings, he's very serviceable, and seems like something the Dodgers would do. Seems like a very smart move. Now, following Morton is Clayton Kershaw, and of course, the Dodgers are going to bring him back on a 1-year, $7 million contract. It's Kershaw, it's the Dodgers. Need I say more? Now, following Kershaw is Shane Bieber. Now, this is another random one, but I have him going to the New York Mets on a 4-year, $100 million contract. Since the Mets are going to lose out on Manaea, I have them taking the risk in signing Shane Bieber, who looked phenomenal before having Tommy John at the beginning of 2024. But who knows? This one might turn out better than the Scherzer and Verlander contracts. And speaking of Scherzer, I have him going to the Atlanta Braves on a 1-year, $13 million contract. If healthy, he's a guy that can eat a lot of innings for them, and Spencer Strider will not be back right away due to his injury from last year. And who knows if Max Fried does come back, even though I did predict that. So I feel like Scherzer could be a good stopgap for the Braves in 2025. And the last starting pitcher we're going to talk about is Patrick Corbin, and I have him going to the Tampa Bay Rays on a 1-year, $1.5 million contract. We all know how bad Corbin was with the Nationals the last, 5 years of that contract. He was bad, but I feel like if you throw him into the pitching lab for the Rays, could unlock something that he hasn't been able to find in a few years, and they could really get something out of Corbin. But that about does it. Let me know your off-season signing predictions down in the comment section below, and while you're down there, if you could like the video and subscribe to the channel, that'd be greatly appreciated. Until next time, guys, everyone have a great day. Thanks for watching.